most people believe will win their league. Two teams fighting eventually to be a 1 seed looked the part. Let's start in the Hoosier State, where Indiana at home, where they've had some success with Mike Woodson as their coach against number 2 Purdue, and Purdue has struggled a little bit. You know, their 2 losses on the road in Big Ten play on the road. So you'd think, and I thought, Indiana had a chance. That was not the case. Not the case, even in the least, as Purdue demolishes Indiana. And I don't know what Goodman thinks, but I can tell you that from my perspective, okay, and we'll get to Kansas's dominance over Oklahoma State. Zach Edey had a different look in his eye, right? It's the old competitive greatness, right? Can you be great when greatness is called upon you? And look, Kel Ware physically shouldn't be able to match up with the 300-plus pounds of 7'3" frame that Zach Edey has. But again, a different level of intensity. And I mean, Braden Smith, Jeff, didn't even play particularly well, didn't shoot particularly well, but it didn't matter because Purdue was so much more physical, so much more precise with what they want to do. And Indiana looked, again, and here's what will happen. We'll take this clip, we'll put it on social, and you'll say Gottlieb said Indiana is a fraud. I don't think they're a fraud. I think they looked like a fraud last night. They looked like they weren't ready for that. It's a different level of basketball. I call it a clean neck game. Do you know what that means?
No.
Okay. So your neck, you get those neck hairs, whatever. When it's a big game, if you're not getting a haircut, you got to get cleaned up. You can't have a hairy neck. Right? This is a real thing in hoop. Right? Like, dude, this is a clean neck game. You got to look. You got the shoes got to be tight. The neck's got to be clean. It looked like Indiana didn't know it was a clean neck game, and Purdue did. That was championship level basketball. Lawyer was awesome. Edey was awesome. And look, Indiana actually shot the ball. Trey Galloway actually shot the ball well, and still non-competitive in comparison to Purdue.
So are you telling me, first of all, that I've got to clean up my neck before the show?
Big shows, yeah. Like literally you look like you just woke up. You just kind of rolled out. Like it was a rough night last night in Bloomington.
It was a rough night. I was not in Bloomington. My daughter was. And, yeah, the game was over at halftime. They made it close for a minute. They put a little bit of – not close was like 9 points. But, yeah, I mean, listen, the bottom line was you don't have good enough guard play in Indiana. And the difference wasn't Zach Edey, I don't think, even though he put up another monster game. To me, the difference was Lance Jones and Fletcher Lawyer. Mm-hmm. And like you said, Braden Smith wasn't great, but Lance Jones is exactly what this Indiana team needs right now. And they didn't get in the portal. And that's been my problem with Mike Woodson throughout, is he's playing like it's the 1980s. And instead of getting another guard in the portal, Doug, he went and got a couple of backup bigs. Anthony Walker from Miami, Peyton Sparks from Ball State. Listen, if you had gotten one of those as a guard like Lance Jones, I'm not saying you win that game, but you're a tournament-ish team instead of being a fringe top 100 team right now. It's a big, big difference. So I thought where Mike Woodson lost this game and this season was in the portal. In the portal.
It's interesting you bring that up because when you talk to these coaches, they will tell you, hey, look, man, you got to understand how it works. We have a budget. There's a timing. We don't know who we're keeping, who we don't keep. It's very much a moving target. I understand that. Here's where I will side with you. I will agree with you, is that it's different at Indiana, okay? Both schools have solid NIL, okay? Zach Edey is making real NIL. When I say real NIL, like he's actually the face of places in West Lafayette. Like there's probably about 5 to 10 college basketball players who get that. Okay. But Indiana is well funded. Funding is not their issue. Okay. So could there be a timing thing in terms of Lance Jones and others who are available? Okay. There's also the relationship piece to it as well, whether it's with the player, with the AAU coach, with the high school coach, with the agent. That's also a piece in this. But Mike Woodson, again, is supposed to usurp those because of his reputation with NBA people and NBA agents. So I'm going to agree with you there. There's a roster imbalance. But the other part to it is, and this is a real thing, is Xavier Johnson was awful. You know, he doesn't seem to be bought into Xavier. Xavier must not be playing well in practice. It must not be giving the vibes that he's locked in and he's what he wants.
And the flagrants aren't helping him. The flagrant, 2 last week, and then the flagrant 1 last night, they're not helping his case as well. But
no,
you're right.
But he's a frustrated basketball player, right? Sure. He's I came back to be the guy to make it all right, and plus he's gotten hurt and he's frustrated with role, and I think it's coming out there. But you combine the fact that they don't have really a depth of quality guards, right? I mean, because that's really what it comes down to, right? All right, so say your plan was we got Trey Galloway, who's kind of a do everything. Obviously, until last night, he shot very poorly this season. But you got Trey Galloway. That's your one wing, and you had Xavier Johnson. The fact that they have such a void there at the 2, right, and a lack of depth of experience scoring talent at the 2 is what really, really hurts them. And they've had other guys go elsewhere as well, but everybody has that. So I'm going to agree.
Doug,
but you also look. Let's not bury the lead.
Doug, your 3 best players are 4s and 5s, and you can't play them all together. Renew, Ware, and Mbako. They don't fit together on the court. Mbako is a 4, right? Renew is not a stretch. Ware is not really a stretch 5. Like they can both make them. Yeah. They can both make like 1 out of every 3, maybe, but that's not what they are. They don't.
Yeah, they have roster imbalance.
Construction.
No, they have roster imbalance. They have a tremendous roster imbalance. So obviously frustrating. But again, let's not bury the lead. The lead should be Purdue, okay? Because all those things aside, right? Purdue, they got bullied a little bit by Northwestern, lost that game, right? 2 road losses in Big Ten play, and that one, they took care of business. They took the crowd out of it. They looked like a championship caliber team last night in Bloomington.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, listen, again, to me, if you somehow get 2 of the 3 of Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, or Lance Jones playing well, because you know what Edey's going to do. You're not stopping him. You're not. Now, again, you don't want to give him, 33 and 14, but you're not stopping him. So the key is, can you keep those other guys off now? Are they not making shots? Are you not giving them wide open looks like you were giving to Fletcher Lawyer last night? Because when he gets going, I do think this is a completely different team, because he also gives them kind of that energy that they need, because they don't play with a ton of energy. And I think when he plays well, it's a completely different Purdue team. But again, I still say, like, UConn, Purdue, and I think most people would agree right now, Doug, they're 1A and 1B.
Oh, I don't think there's any question about it at all. All right, let's stay in the Big Ten. You talk about road in the Big Ten and the 1A and 1B. Wisconsin's a team that had been playing so well and looked like, all right, they're second best team in the Big Ten. And heck, maybe they could give Purdue a scare. But I mentioned Kanye Cleary, who was there last year, stayed through the coaching change, remarkable athlete, improved as a shooter. And he and Ace Baldwin, they were just too athletic, too aggressive for Wisconsin, who could never kind of get them settled. I mean, Penn State was awesome. Wisconsin was not. It was a pace of play I thought that Wisconsin wasn't super comfortable with, still competitive, but Penn State pulls off, I guess you call it the upset playing at home.
Complete different style than you see in the Big Ten, right? That's what Mike Rhodes brings into the Big Ten from VCU. They don't play like everybody else, and that causes issues for a Wisconsin team that, like you said, A.J. Storr can match up athletically. Nobody else can on the Badgers. So I think it was, a question of turning the ball over early. They weren't used to that pressure, getting after them. And again, listen, Wisconsin's really good, and they're solid in so many different areas, but they're not going to overpower you. That's not what they are. And you go on the road, it is not easy to win on the road, as we've talked about all year. But Kansas did win on the road in your house, and they didn't just win easily, Doug. You thought it was going to be close again. This was not close at all. No. Why?
Myriad of reasons. First, Kansas was outstanding. Look, one of the things, the expression is you can't win a game in the first half, but you can lose a game in the first half. KU comes out and they're up 6-0 to start the game, right? And you already have, a half-full building, and of that half-full building, half of it is Kansas fans who can't get into Lawrence to see him, so they drive down to see him play in Stillwater. So let's start with crediting Kansas. They just executed. They looked the part. I thought, Furphy got it going in the first half. He had 15 at the half, made all 3 of his threes, but really he got a dunk on the second play. And, young players are. They get a dunk, they hit a 3, they feel good about themselves. So a team that has like 4 players and then a couple of possibles, now the possible has 15 at the half, and it felt like it was lights out. Look, Hunter Dickinson, he's a grown man, and he's going against Brandon Garrison, who's a McDonald's All-American, but just a boy. And it was a mismatch. The biggest issue was Javon Small, who's Oklahoma State's best player, has been struggling, made his first shot, missed his next 9. If your best player is your point guard, he doesn't play well at either end. And then you have a massive mismatch at the 5. I thought Kansas looked great. I thought Oklahoma State looked like they quit. And it was a really tough night in Stillwater for Oklahoma State. But again, let's not bury it and talk about Oklahoma State. They're a non-player in terms of the NCAA tournament. This is more about to win a league. These are the games you can't allow to be close. That's what Purdue did to a better Indiana team than Oklahoma State, and that's what Kansas did as well. And then the juxtaposition of that versus Baylor goes on the road, gets beat by K-State. Right? That's more a traditional league game.
All right, so I want to ask you about that. Forget about Kansas going in Oklahoma State because, again, like you said, not all that relevant. There were 3 other games last night in the Big 12 that were relevant, right?
Yes.
Kansas State gets a huge resume win against Baylor in overtime. Tang is now 10-0 in overtime, and he's beaten Scott Drew all 3 times they have played each other, his former boss. Cincinnati gets a huge win over TCU. I never thought I'd say that, in overtime as well. And Cincinnati, again, needed this one for its resume. Their numbers were pretty good. And then you got BYU holding off Iowa State by 15 in Salt Lake. And Spencer Johnson was awesome in that game.
Awesome.
So you've got 3 games there that are all pivotal games for the Big 12. Which one stood out the most? Which is the one that you're like, all right, that win is going to hold up? That's going to be more important than the others.
Wow. Well,
not easy.
It's not, but stick with me for a second here if this logic makes sense. Okay. So you want – look, I don't know if Cincinnati's ultimately a player for an NCAA tournament spot. Right now they're playing like it. BYU, it's really hard to tell because, the variance. They even last night they shot, I think, like 36 threes. Like, a lot of it is, did they make shots? Right. But as you get to February, the schedule can get harder or easier based upon teams that think they have hope, teams that think they have a chance. And look, West Virginia beat Texas going back to last Saturday. I don't think they have hope, but they're not decimated yet. In this league of 14 teams, right now Oklahoma State's the only one that you think that there's a sense of hopelessness there, right? This is an amazing basketball league. Amazing.
West Virginia's close. West Virginia's close. They're playing for Josh Eilert's job and their NIL money as much as anything else. West Virginia's probably
whatever
not
motivates them. Whatever motivates them is fine. West Virginia looked like they were going to be non-competitive, and we'll see. Let's see what the next couple games are. That may have just been one blip, okay? But everything else is basically the home team is likely going to win, and mostly super competitive games. This league is incredible. I don't know where Texas is in this league. I can't possibly tell you. I know where Baylor's ranked, But we did say Oklahoma State, again, they should have beaten Baylor, right? So they're weird. K-State, I mean, I'm telling you, they had Texas Tech dead to rights. So it's a league where outside of a couple of matchups, it really is anybody's ballgame. It sounds super cliche. You don't want to go there as an analyst or whatever. But what an unbelievably incredible competitive league where on any given night you're walking into a hornet's nest of home fans and really talented players and coaches.
Yeah, there's a chance 11 teams in the Big 12 have a chance. I don't think they'll get 11. I think they'll probably get 9 or 10, have a chance to get into the NCAA tournament. All right, still to come, we are going to discuss a couple of Big East teams. Red hot Seton Hall and Shaheen Holloway sit atop the conference standings. And UConn puts its #1 ranking on the line tonight. We'll talk about that next. Goodman versus Gottlieb. Welcome back. Goodman versus Gottlieb. I'm Jeff Goodman. He's Doug Gottlieb. And, man, is there anybody hotter than Shaheen Holloway and the Seton Hall Pirates, Doug? They've now won 7 of 8. They smacked St. John's last night. Steve Masiello took the place of Rick Pitino, who had COVID. He didn't coach last night. But, listen, I don't know if it mattered if John Wooden was coaching that team last night. Seton Hall has been on absolute fire lately. They've taken down everybody in the Big East, right? I mean, won at Providence, beat Marquette, beat UConn, beat St. John's last night. They've come from kind of far off the bubble, Doug, to now firmly entrenched in the NCAA tournament. Can they sustain this? Not can they. Will they sustain this?
I think they will. I mean, look, this is a real challenge for how we look at the sport. Okay, because most teams have a new team every year, and you don't know what you have. And even when you think you know what you have, when you get into league play, that changes. And so, I don't know how you can dismiss the fact that Seton Hall now has 4 quad 1 wins. So I'm with you. I think they're solidly in based upon how they've played. But what we're doing is, let's keep in mind, we're completely dismissing their non-conference ineptitude, which I'm fine with. Yeah. But then we have to do that universally, right? We got to do that universally. And it has to work both ways. So I'm fascinated to see how we make this adjustment to where we go for Seton Hall, we're going to dismiss the fact that in non-conference, they didn't play well. They were a 500 team or slightly above 500 because they were so good in league play. Okay, what about the teams that were awesome out of league and really struggle in league? Or what about the other teams that do better? It's very, very difficult to tell. But just in the context of last night, he couldn't be more impressed with Seton Hall. And the Johnnies have been playing good basketball. They've been better. They've started to figure out their team. So the fact that Mass was coaching and it wasn't Pitino, there's no asterisk by it for Seton Hall. That was a whooping, and confidence is a big part of it. And that's kind of what I was getting to with talking about the Big 12. Is it's not just about fan confidence and them showing up because you think you have a chance. A lot of it's about the mojo within the players, right? That's a real thing. And they can be 24 years old. They're still just as fragile as the 18-year-olds in terms of their confidence. And right now, Seton Hall is not only playing well, they're playing exceptionally confidently. And I think a lot of that is Shaheen, because he doesn't waver in his belief, even if he changes his approach in terms of who he's playing and how he's playing them.
So again, I'm not going to use the 3 letters because you banned me from using those 3 letters. But in the pay-for-play world, not an NIL. NIL. Okay. I'm not saying NIL anymore.
Yeah. I was thinking about you say 3 letters, and I'm like, anyway, go ahead.
3?
Yes.
In that world, Seton Hall was not strong. So to me, it's almost like, is this the best team money couldn't buy? Because they're not dealing with $1 million, $2 million, $3 million like Villanova in their own league, right? UConn's got real NIL. Marquette's got real NIL. Seton Hall does not. What Shaheen has been able to do is remarkable because, again, he's done it Jaden Bediako was not a big-time transfer. He didn't have to pay a lot of money. He doesn't have it, right? Kadari Richmond, to get him back, my guess is he probably paid him maybe $100,000, Doug, to keep Kadari Richmond. But these dudes, they're the right group for Shaheen. It's almost like, honestly, in a way, I almost don't want Shaheen to have big pay-for-play money because I think then he's going to get the wrong players for him.
Well, that's the big challenge for it's a challenge in a different way from, we all remember Villanova when they made their first Final Four, they had the #1 recruiting class, and that was Jay Wright's worst teams, right? Because they weren't Villanova guys. You got to get your type of guys. I think the Kadari Richmond thing, I don't know what the numbers are. I'm guessing it's 6 figures. And one of the lessons that I think a lot of these coaches are learning is it is in many ways more important to retain your best player than to go out and pick that like when you're grocery shopping, because they look a lot better on the aisle than they do when they're in your refrigerator. So I also think that, look, it is about money, but it's also about relationships, in that what Shaheen can sell to people is like, look, dude, you can go get 75 more over there, but one, you get to live in and around near New York City, but you get to play for me. And his connection, relationships with agents and everyone he recruits, I think there's quality stuff there. It's a lot less about the money sometimes. You have to have the money to get into the conversation, and then after that, it does become real kind of old school recruiting. But let's get all that aside. It's a good team. I also think it speaks a little bit to the talent in the Big East is not the talent, for the most part, at the top of the Big 12, maybe the SEC, although the SEC is a little bit younger. So I think the Seton Hall story is a great one, and it just shows that even some of these really good young coaches like Shaheen Holloway, it takes them a month or two seeing them play to figure out what they have and how they want to play.
All right, let's go. A couple game picks for tonight. The big game of the night is in the Big East. Creighton at number 1, UConn. Do you give the Blue Jays any shot of going into UConn and getting the win?
I do, from this standpoint. I think they match up pretty well, especially you have Kalkbrenner playing when you're playing without your traditional center. And he's kind of a problem. They run you off the 3-point line, but I like UConn to win. And I think that environment on these cold winter days, you come off a snowstorm like Storrs, that place will be a snake pit. I like UConn, but I do see a path in which Creighton can shoot some threes, can make some threes, and make this really competitive.
I'm with you. You got 10 seconds. Texas Tech at Houston. Can the Red Raiders pull off the big upset?
No. This is a Houston game. Houston hasn't played well on the road. At home, they'll shut off your water. Houston wins.
Yeah, I agree. Both home teams win there. All right, thanks for joining us. Goodman versus Gottlieb. We'll see you tomorrow here on Stadium, 1 o'clock Eastern.
Hey, what up? Welcome in. I'm Doug Gottlieb. Jeff Goodman will join me in a second. It's Goodman versus Gottlieb, college basketball every day here on Stadium. And we give you 30 minutes of the real hoop talk that you are absolutely dying to see. And I thought last night two teams, especially two teams in college basketball who have great reputations, two teams that are Final Four contenders, two teams that most people believe will win their league, two teams fighting eventually to be a one seed, looked the part. Let's start in the Hoosier State, where Indiana at home, where they've had some success with Mike Woodson as their coach against number 2 Purdue, and Purdue has struggled a little bit. You know, their 2 losses on the road in Big Ten play on the road. So you'd think, and I thought, Indiana had a chance. That was not the case. Not the case, even in the least, as Purdue demolishes Indiana. And I don't know what Goodman thinks, but I can tell you that from my perspective, okay, and we'll get to Kansas's dominance over Oklahoma State. Zach Edey had a different look in his eye, right? It's the old competitive greatness, right? Can you be great when greatness is called upon you? And look, Kel Ware physically shouldn't be able to match up with the 300-plus pounds of 7'3" frame that Zach Edey has. But again, a different level of intensity. And I mean, Braden Smith, Jeff, didn't even play particularly well, didn't shoot particularly well, but it didn't matter because Purdue was so much more physical, so much more precise with what they want to do. And Indiana looked, again, and here's what will happen. We'll take this clip, we'll put it on social, and you'll say Gottlieb said Indiana is a fraud. I don't think they're a fraud. I think they looked like a fraud last night. They looked like they weren't ready for that. It's a